The first crack in the American job market did not come from mass layoffs, factory shutdowns, or a sudden recession headline. It came quietly, buried inside a statistical revision that most people never read. In the spring of 2025, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics revised its employment data and erased more than 900,000 jobs that had previously been reported as created between early 2023 and March 2025. Nearly 1 million jobs that had shaped headlines, reassured investors, and fueled political talking points simply vanished on paper. Officially, the unemployment rate still hovered around 4.3%, a number that sounded stable, even healthy. More than 7.4 million Americans were actively looking for work, but on the surface, the economy appeared resilient. Stock markets remained elevated. Corporate earnings reports continued to beat expectations. Politicians pointed to charts and declared the labor market strong. Yet beneath those charts, the foundation had already begun to rot. Behind every revision is a human story. One of them belongs to a retail worker in her early 30s who stitched together 5 different part-time jobs just to cover rent, health insurance, and groceries. None of those jobs offered stability. None offered upward mobility. All of them counted as employment in the system. On paper, she was proof the economy was working. In reality, she was proof it was not. This disconnect between statistics and lived experience is not an accident. It is a feature of the modern labor market. When nearly 1 million jobs can disappear retroactively without triggering panic, it reveals how fragile the measurement itself has become. Employment today is padded by temporary contracts, gig roles, on-call shifts, and algorithmic scheduling that inflates job counts without creating careers. Recent economic projections now quietly acknowledge this gap. Growth forecasts for 2026 show the United States economy expanding faster than previously expected, while hiring remains flat or stagnant. In other words, output rises, profits grow, but payrolls do not. The economy is learning how to move forward without carrying workers with it. This was the moment when the job market rewrote its own history. The collapse did not begin with mass firings. It began when trust in the numbers broke. When people realized that job creation could be revised away months later, that employment could exist without security, and that stability was no longer baked into growth. By the time headlines catch up, the damage will already feel familiar, because millions of Americans are living it now. The most unsettling feature of the current labor crisis is not that jobs are disappearing, it is that they are disappearing at the same time the economy appears to be winning. By nearly every traditional metric, corporate America is thriving. Stock indexes remain elevated. Balance sheets are strong. Profit margins sit near historic highs. Yet layoffs continue to accelerate, and hiring pipelines remain frozen. This contradiction has a name now, even if policymakers avoid saying it out loud: the jobless boom. In 2025 alone, more than 1 million American jobs were cut, the highest annual total since the pandemic shock of 2020. Technology firms led the wave, but they were not alone. Finance, media, logistics, retail, and professional services all followed. What made this cycle different was not the scale, but the timing. These cuts did not arrive during a recession. They arrived during a period of economic expansion. Corporate earnings reports tell the story clearly. Companies are making more money with fewer people. Automation, cost-cutting, outsourcing, and restructuring have pushed productivity higher, while payrolls shrink. Executives praise efficiency on earnings calls, then announce workforce reductions days later. Investors reward the stock. Workers absorb the loss. This is not a temporary imbalance. New forecasts for 2026 now openly predict faster economic growth, paired with a stagnant labor market, a scenario that would have been considered impossible a generation ago. In the past, growth meant hiring. Expansion meant opportunity. Today, growth increasingly means software upgrades, automation tools, and organizational flattening. The stock market reflects this shift with brutal honesty. Layoff announcements routinely push share prices higher. Fewer employees are framed as discipline. Fewer benefits are framed as optimization. Fewer humans are framed as progress. The labor force, once the engine of American growth, has become a line item to be minimized. For workers, this creates a psychological whiplash. The economy is supposedly strong, yet job searches stretch for months. Wages stagnate, While corporate profits climb, stability becomes harder to find precisely when the system claims success. This disconnect is not accidental. It is structural. The jobless boom marks a turning point. The economy is no longer designed to distribute gains through employment. It is designed to extract output while shedding labor wherever possible. And once that model proves profitable, there is no incentive to reverse it. The collapse, in this sense, is not sudden. It is efficient, quiet, and highly rewarded. For years, automation was sold to American workers as a distant threat, something that would arrive slowly, job by job, industry by industry. That narrative no longer holds. The line between tools that assist workers and systems that replace them has already been crossed. Artificial intelligence is no longer an upgrade to productivity. It is a structural substitute for labor, and its impact is accelerating faster than most forecasts predicted. By the end of 2025, tens of thousands of jobs in the technology sector alone had been eliminated directly as companies replaced teams with automated systems. Software engineers, content analysts, customer support specialists, junior marketers, legal researchers, and financial analysts all found themselves competing not just with other applicants, but with code that never sleeps, never negotiates, and never asks for benefits. What once required entire departments can now be handled by a handful of operators overseeing machines. The danger lies not only in the scale of automation, but in its target. Earlier waves of technological change primarily affected manual or repetitive labor. This wave is aimed at white-collar work, the very roles that defined economic security for the American middle class. Jobs built on writing, analysis, forecasting, and decision support are being compressed or eliminated entirely. The assumption that a college degree protects against automation is collapsing in real time. Recent warnings from leading artificial intelligence researchers now suggest that 2026 may mark a sharp inflection point, as firms deploy more autonomous systems capable of handling complex tasks without human oversight. These systems are not experimental. They are already being integrated into finance, law, healthcare administration, media production, and corporate strategy. Once deployed, they rarely get rolled back. Executives frame this shift as necessity. Labor is expensive. AI is scalable. In a competitive market, companies that do not automate risk being undercut by those that do. The result is a race where every firm is incentivized to reduce human headcount, even as the broader economy absorbs the consequences. Productivity rises, employment falls. Both outcomes are treated as success. This is why the job losses tied to automation feel different from previous downturns. These jobs are not on pause. They are not waiting for demand to return. They are gone because the role itself has been redesigned out of existence. The machine does not replace the worker. It replaces the need for the job altogether. The collapse of the 2026 job market cannot be understood without confronting this reality. Automation is not a wave that will pass. It is the new baseline. And once an economy learns it can grow without labor, it will never willingly go back. The most severe damage in this new labor landscape is not happening at the top or the bottom. It is happening at the entrance. The American job market is experiencing an extinction event at the entry level, and its consequences will ripple for decades. The first rung of the career ladder, once the gateway into the middle class, is quietly being removed. Positions that were historically designed for new graduates now demand experience that cannot logically exist. Entry-level roles routinely require 2 to 3 years of prior work, advanced technical skills, and portfolios that resemble full-time careers. What used to be training jobs have become filtering mechanisms. Companies want ready-made workers without investing in development. The contradiction is obvious, but the system persists because employers now hold all the leverage. College graduates feel this collapse first and hardest. The average American student leaves school with nearly $40,000 in student loan debt, only to discover that the labor market has no door waiting for them. Even graduates from elite universities are not immune. Recent hiring data shows that a significant share of top-tier graduates remain unemployed months after finishing school, a scenario that would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago. Prestige no longer guarantees access. Credentials no longer guarantee opportunity. This breakdown is often misinterpreted as a skills gap. In reality, it is a risk transfer. Employers have offloaded the cost of training entirely onto individuals. Internships are unpaid or temporary, Contract roles replace full-time offers. Trial periods stretch for months with no promise of permanence. Young workers are asked to prove their value repeatedly, often without compensation, while companies retain the option to walk away. The economic logic is ruthless. Automation and AI systems now handle much of the work that once justified junior roles. Entry-level analysts, assistants, and coordinators are no longer needed at scale. The remaining positions are fewer, more competitive, and designed for candidates who can contribute immediately. Learning on the job, once a defining feature of American employment, is treated as inefficiency. The result is a generation stuck in limbo. Too educated to accept low-wage service work, yet locked out of professional careers. The market counts them as employed if they freelance, drive, or patch together temporary income. But beneath the statistics, the ladder has already collapsed. Without a first step, there can be no climb. When the bottom rung of the career ladder disappears, the damage does not stay at the bottom. It moves upward, slowly at first, then all at once. What the American labor market is experiencing is not simply a shortage of jobs, but a structural collapse of the entire career pipeline. The system that once moved workers from junior roles to mid-level positions and eventually into leadership is breaking from the base upward. For decades, companies relied on a steady flow of entry-level hires to replenish their workforce. Junior employees learned on the job, absorbed institutional knowledge, and gradually replaced older workers. That pipeline no longer functions. With fewer entry points, there are fewer people advancing. With fewer people advancing, competition at the mid-career level becomes brutal. Promotions stall. Lateral moves replace upward mobility. Experience accumulates, but opportunity does not. Mid-career workers now find themselves trapped in a narrow corridor. They are too expensive to be considered flexible, yet too replaceable to be secure. Many hold solid resumes, a decade of experience, and strong performance records, yet remain stuck in roles with no clear path forward. The presence of automation compounds the pressure. AI systems reduce the need for large teams, compressing organizational structures and eliminating layers of management that once served as stepping stones. New labor projections for 2026 show that this pattern is not limited to the United States. Employers across Europe and other advanced economies are signaling hiring freezes and planned workforce reductions even as output stabilizes. The implication is clear. This is not a temporary adjustment tied to one country or one business cycle. It is a synchronized shift in how labor is valued globally. The long-term risk is leadership starvation. Organizations that stop investing in junior talent eventually run out of experienced leaders. Skills cannot be imported instantly. Institutional memory cannot be automated. Yet the incentives push companies to prioritize short-term efficiency over long-term resilience. The cost is invisible at first, then unavoidable. This collapse also reshapes power inside the workplace. When advancement stalls, loyalty erodes. Workers stop viewing companies as places to build careers and start treating them as temporary income sources. Turnover increases, engagement declines. The employment relationship becomes transactional, brittle, and unstable. The irony is that the career ladder was not destroyed by crisis. It was dismantled by optimization. Each decision made sense in isolation. Cut training costs, reduce headcount, automate routine tasks, flatten management. Together, they produced a labor market where progression is no longer guaranteed and in many cases, no longer possible. Faced with a collapsing career pipeline, policymakers and corporate leaders have offered a single solution with near-religious consistency. Reskilling. Learn new tools. Adapt faster. Become more flexible. The message sounds empowering, but it masks a harsher truth. Reskilling is not a lifeboat. It is a bottleneck, and not everyone can pass through it in time. By current estimates, more than half of the American workforce will need some form of retraining before the end of this decade just to remain employable. That number alone reveals the scale of the problem. Reskilling programs are expensive, time-consuming, and unevenly accessible. They favor those who already have financial stability, flexible schedules, and strong educational foundations. For workers living paycheck to paycheck, the promise of retraining often feels theoretical at best. Even when retraining succeeds, it does not guarantee placement. Certifications and new skills may increase interview callbacks, but they do not create jobs out of thin air. Recent labor projections now indicate that roughly 12 to 14% of workers will be forced to transition into entirely new occupations by 2026, a rate of disruption rarely seen outside wartime economies. Many of those new roles pay less, offer less security, and come with fewer benefits than the jobs they replace. There is also a timing problem that reskilling advocates rarely acknowledge. Automation moves faster than education. AI systems can be deployed in months. Workforce retraining takes years. By the time workers complete new programs, the target roles may already be shrinking. This creates a moving target, where individuals are constantly chasing relevance, while the market quietly shifts again. Economic forecasts for 2026 now reinforce this imbalance, showing continued gross domestic product growth alongside weak hiring and limited job creation. The economy is expanding, but the demand for labor is not keeping pace. Reskilling, in this environment, becomes a sorting mechanism rather than a solution. It determines who survives the transition, not whether the transition can be avoided. The uncomfortable reality is that reskilling assumes a functioning labor market waiting on the other side. What emerges instead is a narrower funnel, where fewer roles exist and competition intensifies. Workers are told to adapt individually to what is fundamentally a systemic shift. Responsibility is privatized. Risk is individualized. Success becomes a matter of timing, access, and luck as much as effort. Reskilling will help some. It will not save all. And framing it as a universal answer delays a more honest conversation about how much labor the modern economy actually intends to absorb. Until that question is confronted, retraining will remain a promise that sounds compassionate while quietly rationing opportunity. The collapse of the 2026 job market is not defined by a single statistic, a single technology, or a single policy failure. It is defined by a collective realization. For the first time in modern American history, the economy can grow, innovate, and generate record profits while leaving a growing share of its workforce behind. The breakdown is not loud. It is procedural, algorithmic, and normalized. What makes this moment dangerous is not just the loss of jobs, but the erosion of trust. Trust that effort leads to opportunity. Trust that education provides a pathway forward. Trust that adaptation will be rewarded. When those assumptions fail, frustration turns into disengagement. Workers stop planning long-term. Careers shrink into short contracts. Stability becomes a luxury rather than a baseline. The official numbers will continue to fluctuate. Unemployment rates will rise and fall. Monthly reports will offer reassurance or alarm depending on the revision cycle. But beneath those headlines, the structural shift remains intact. Automation is permanent. Entry points are scarce. Career ladders are fractured. Growth no longer guarantees inclusion. The real collapse, then, is psychological. It is the moment when millions of Americans quietly accept that the rules have changed without being clearly rewritten. The economy asks for flexibility without offering security. It demands adaptation without guaranteeing access. And it frames this imbalance as progress. The job market of 2026 is not broken in the traditional sense. It is functioning exactly as designed for an era that prioritizes efficiency over employment. The question is not whether this system can generate wealth. It already does. The question is who that wealth is designed to serve, and how long a society can sustain growth while disconnecting it from work. Before we end, I want to hear from you. What do you think about where the job market is heading, and how prepared do you feel for what comes next? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching.